The biggest story from the MRQ has to be Astralis missing their 15th major in a row, and not only missing it, but missing it in the most heartbreaking fashion physically possible in overtime of map 3 of the last potential game they needed to win to actually get into the event. And not only that, but based on the news from Overdrive, Astralis might be in financial trouble as a result. But before we go any further, the sponsor of today's video. Skin Club is a top adult, that means 18 plus, case opening site with a huge variety of cases that can be unboxed to collect and upgrade skins. Skin Club's provably fair system guarantees a fair chance to all players that you can easily track, whether you're unboxing alone in your room or against users or bots on LAN, or anywhere in between. Skin Club lets you open individual cases solo, or you can try to unbox your favorite skin or a skin from your favorite creator. Hey, Vitality is on here, and so is Kerrigan. If you've had enough of that, come back another time and activate your daily case, which Skin Club has for free with up to 13 different levels based on your experience. If you'd rather try something different, you can find your perfect match in battle on Battle Tinder, where you can weigh the risks to upgrade your undesired garbage skins for something actually useful. Just put in the skin, look for an upgrade, and let it spin. Skin Club offers themed events monthly, bringing new cases, giveaways, and prizes you can get by playing on the platform. You can deposit with crypto, card, or the skin sitting in limbo that you never touch. Make sure to check out the link in the description for a 7% deposit bonus. Okay, I suppose it wouldn't be as a result necessarily, however, it is one of those heartbreaking, org-shattering situations where you spend this much on a roster, you have a great team on paper, and you simply fail to compete at the best event of the year, the one that makes typically you the most money as a team and as an organization as well. But the crazy thing is, and you can feel any way you want about Astralis, I'm not a huge fan of the org themselves, but this feels kind of heartbreaking for the players, honestly, because this is a team where I feel like from a macro level, I feel like Cadian has actually done a reasonable job with this team. I don't like their style, but I think they make good decisions macro-wise, but in the micro, they constantly make incredible, confusing mistakes constantly, and they just can't seem to. One of the crazy things is they can't seem to have everyone activate at the same time. It's like the anti-honeymoon period. Like every game, someone else is kind of shitting the bed, and someone else is, other than Device, like Device and one other are doing well in any given game, but just barely not enough to win any actual tournament or do really all that well outside of a couple of isolated events. And when it comes to this one, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to highlight a few things that just, it really feels like, and I never want to say that a team that lost was the better team. I feel like that's kind of cheap to say. However, it does feel like, honestly, Astralis, for the majority of this game, felt like the better team. However, some players from Bait mentioned that it felt like all of Astralis's plays they were making with a lot of anxiety, and that is exactly how I was thinking about it before I heard that comment. Like when I watched this one live, they're playing like this is the most important game of their lives. And you have to give credit to Bait because this is one of the most important games of their lives. This is them getting into the major the second time a full Ukrainian roster I think has ever made the major, is what someone said. It is an incredibly important game, and the fact that they could hold their nerve better than Astralis, maybe they feel a little bit less pressure because it's not like, okay, we're going to get fired if we miss this potentially, but at the same time, they are under a lot of pressure, and they do a much better job of actually managing that. Anyways, 4v5 already in this round. Astralis, again, they're not perfect on a macro level, and I'm not a huge fan of the way they actually play from a macro perspective. Just the style they play is not the style of CS I enjoy. But at the same time, they're regularly in very good positions in this game, and you're going to see just some absolute historic fumbles from a couple of different players in really unfortunate situations, and Stown is one of them, but there's a couple from some other players as well. Anyways, this is an anti-force here. They do a bit of a pivot over to A, and it ends up giving up B and allowing a bomb plant in theory. But actually, with Device pivoting over, and Device has a hell of a game in this series. He pivots over, gets 2. Headtrick doesn't even get a chance to plant the bomb. And that's something that I think Astralis does well. In fact, their CT sides are quite strong. It's their T sides. In this event, if I remember correctly, not a single player on Astralis is positive on their T sides, or above 1 rating, I should say. But in this case, their CT sides are quite active. They do a pretty good job of it. I think there's a couple of rounds maybe they could have even done better, but in this case, it's not. I don't think they do anything too crazy. They've got the heavy mid control with Cadian and Yabi. Stown is going to play around this smoke here, which is a great idea. There's nothing really too crazy that I think Astralis do that should cost them rounds, but individually, again, in the micro, I think they make some mistakes. Here's Stown, goes for the spam. NPL hears that spam, tries to catch the spam back as he knows, okay, well, you go for that spam, you're either backing all the way up or you're backing into that corner. Really, I think that's more of a nice individual play from NPL, but that's one where if Stown has a A1S, he probably gets away with that, or he's more likely to get away with it. Instead, he just gets absolutely destroyed. It happens. 5v4 now for Bait. And again, I think Bait's a great team. I think they do a lot of things right. So I think you really do need to give as much credit as possible to Bait. But the story is always going to be Astralis missed their 5th major. That's just the unfortunate reality of CS, of the narratives. You know, people are more interested in that rather than Bait, which is, I think they do a lot of really cool things, and the way Alex wins them this game is kind of incredible. But here we had Astralis. They just move back over. They stack towards B. You look at their money. It makes plenty of sense for them to go for a bit of a gamble stack. They gamble the wrong direction, lose the round. No big deal. And then because of that save, Astralis can afford to buy in the following round. Standard utility set out of Yabi. You'll notice Astralis don't have anybody A. They play a lot of heavy B setups to start these rounds. Maybe they know that Bait plays more heavy on the B side, or they don't play a very aggressive A lurk, so you have plenty of time to actually pivot over and cover A later on in the round. Or maybe it's just a stylistic thing that they want to go for. In either case, they don't really get punished for this very much at all. I like this double up in towards ramp. You look for the timing on when to try and catch your opponents, especially if they're throwing utility. Sometimes you can do a bit of a reactionary play where you swing off of a flash if you need to. They end up going for the clear around 1 minute. Maybe this is a timing they know that Bait like to go for a lot of execs, or maybe it's because they're hearing this utility in middle, and that's a great time to go for that sort of peak. You catch likely one player not quite ready for you. But Astralis actually rotate into a really effective setup. They've got Stown holding the mid play. They've got a player in Donut, 2 players in Temple or close to it. They're 4A stacked against what is going to be an A split. The problem is, you know, there's 3 locations that Bait can be coming from. You have to worry about all 3. And if you look at it wrong, if you expect the split to come in the wrong way, it can definitely go wrong. But Yabi opens up with an initial kill. Then Stown ends up dying. Cadian gets mollied off, doesn't get one. And they actually pretty much all go 1 for 1. But that's the problem. Astralis is always kind of like a day late, $1 short in these rounds. They're always really just 1 kill away from what would be a round winning play. And the reality is that going for 1 for 1 is kind of acceptable, but at the same time, you have 4 players on A. You're just really expecting someone on Astralis to get more than 1 kill on that A site defense. So there's 4 players there. Generally, one of them is going to be unexpected. They're not going to clear that angle, especially with where Cadian was playing. But anyways, we got a round here with a really weird buy from Astralis. Part of it is because I think they lose too many players in rounds they win way too often. They end up with so many weird buys, and they're going to win this round. But at the same time, I feel like they just don't win these types of low econ rounds all that often when I watch them. It feels really uncomfortable how often they just have 3-4 rounds get swung back in the opponent's favor because they go for these really uncomfortable buys. And in isolation, none of them are crazy. I think it might be because they force that double op so often. Their economy is always kind of teetering on the edge, but it's definitely partially to do with the fact that they just lose too many players in rounds they win far too often. But here, I mean, they're going to open up into a 3v5, but Device not only picks up 1, he gets a ton of damage and another kill, and Yabi picks up 2 and a ton of damage. So you've got 22 HP between the 2 players left over on Bait, and Device is going to get boosted up and catch Alex right at the end there as well, turning it into a 1v2. I mean, Device kind of wills his way into these games, it feels like, a lot of the time, and it's Device and Stare, I would say, are the 2 best performing members of Astralis in regards to their roles. Into the 2v1, Kensizor decides better of just straight planting on A because he would most likely get killed shortly after planting. But here's a little nice play that Cadian makes that I actually quite like. You see Cadian, he actually ran up, made noise, jumped, and then now it actually trapped Kensizor on site. because Kensizor wanted to actually get out into a good afterplant, but because Cadian was there, then he couldn't actually know, did Cadian cross over, especially because he only had 9 health. You can't, the lower your HP, the more aggressive you need to be playing in terms of peeking into your opponents, catching them off guard. You can't be holding a standard angle that your opponent's going to clear. If you have 9 HP, you're just going to get hit at least one time. So he backs up, tries to repeak, doesn't know where Cadian is, and it never shows up on the scoreboard. Cadian doesn't get the kill, but it is the play that made that round much harder for Bait to actually win. So now we do actually make our way back into a gun round. Again, you're looking at the 3B start from Astralis, nothing too crazy. They will initially open up with Device just completely ready for the pick from Head Trick, so it's an instant kill. Plus the nade from Stair did tons of damage. Plus, Stair is going to get this kill onto NPL as well. I mean, you're looking at this, and this looks like Astralis is kind of powering up to close out an effective CT half. 5v3 already in the round. And not only are they 5v3, but they're actually, again, they're very active on the map. So I'm not a huge fan of whatever is going on B, where they're all in the back lane here. But you have Jabby, who clears out A, pushes through. He actually gets timing. He timings himself there because Alex was turning around to clear Donut, accidentally sees Jabby. So Jabby does actually get spotted out. The information goes Alex's way, but he doesn't overstay his welcome. Alex looks at that push and he goes, okay, maybe A has a gap and I can actually get my way out. But Cadian's in perfect position to prevent that. You end up in a 5v2. This should be theoretically a pretty comfortable win, especially because Essential is already injured, and best case you're looking at most likely they get a bomb plan. But Device just gets jiggled and absolutely destroyed. He basically gets pre-fired there, and you have to give some credit to Kensizor. That's just a really nice play, a really nice peek. But then you have 3 players all looking at one angle. Kensizor is going to come up on the side and mow down 2 of them. He easily could have picked off Cadian as well in that spray down. I mean, if he just has one stray bullet. And Cadian found the perfect timing to get a kill back, right? If Cadian hadn't found that kill at that exact moment, very easily could have turned in Bait's way. And that's what I'm talking about, where kind of everything from a macro perspective made a lot of sense in that round. But then you just have 3 players looking at the exact same angle. Nobody's worried about that long lurk. Kensizor comes up, easily could have just won a 2v5 for his team off the back of that. So skipping the anti-eco, we go into the following gun round. Bait have been doing a lot of kind of delayed mid-control plays, so Astralis look for kind of maybe put a little bit of pressure into mid and give it up, maybe get a kill and just force out utility. They do a good job of forcing out utility, but Cadian just gets peeked by NPL and dies, so unfortunately they open this up into a 4v5. Not exactly what you want. I think you're comfortable giving up mid, especially if you can get a kill. You draw out your opponent's utility, and you can do that once in a while. It's not a big deal, although you do lose plenty of pressure on the map and you have extra angles you have to be worried about. You have to worry about that mid lurk and all those types of plays. But one of the notes I'm going to bring up here, Stown is here in towards Cheetah. He's just going to book it away. And Essential hears that. Now, I think Bait was probably heading back over to B regardless, but that play just looked very confusing. And so Essential, they probably accelerate this rotate back a little bit. Essential clears out Cave. He has a good idea of what's going on, but Device is in the perfect position, gets himself a kill, backs up, and this is standard Device play. This is like the classic Device moment where he picks up, he gets in a good position early, doesn't take any risks, gets 1 kill, and then he gets another kill as they're executing the bomb site. So you turn what is a 4v5 with the wrong bomb site being stacked into a 4v3, and Device has full back lane control. So this is very hard for Bait to actually do anything. But Device misses the shot. And I mentioned before that Kensizor hit a nice shot, and I actually respected the shot that Kensizor hit in the previous round with the pre-fire on the Device. In this case, it really just feels like Device missed. He had plenty of time to hit that shot. He just missed. He was probably looking at his radar or something. And that means that 3-player pushed through Cheetah, where they made a ton of noise in doing so as well. Just got double peeked then. No worry about long. They close out the round. And you end up in what could be a 7-5 half. And Astralis have some good ideas here. I mean, I think Yabi gets run boosted, gets the quick kill on NPL. They have the play in towards middle. They turn it into a 4v3. They don't full clear out lane, however, and Yabi is just going to not get this kill. Now, I can respect that, but Stown in the same position also doesn't get the kill. You don't want to talk about CS as all firepower, all fragging, but Stown has an advantage there, and he catches a guy looking the other direction. He gets a little bit unlucky on the exact timing, but still, one of them needs to get that kill, and they're in a pretty good position. Instead, they both end up dying to one player in middle. Device is going to go for an aggressive play. He actually gets the dink off really nicely, but at this point, the round's essentially over. And then you have Astralis pick up the pistol round, bring it to 9-5. They have the bonus round money, or not tons of money, but they have the bonus round buyout, so they've got a couple of downgraded weapons, I suppose. But you have the same thing on the side of Bait as well. And they've got a pretty good idea of the play they want to make here. They actually want to make their way. What you do is you molly out Pillar, and then you have the SMG, the MAC-10 is going to swing in, and you have someone come out behind him and go for a trade. Play makes tons of sense. You go for the play, and then Yabi does that. That is rough from Yabi, and that's what I'm talking about with, like, their plays just feel full of anxiety. There's a couple of rounds very similar to this, and Cadian in the back. Cadian doesn't want to block Yabi if he wants to back up, but at the same time, if Cadian just came over to this angle, I think he gets that kill before Yabi dies. At the same time, though, if you're Cadian, you're probably not expecting it to go quite like that. But then Astralis have a kind of clever way of trying to deal with this round afterwards. They actually smoke Cadian off so Cadian can throw that molly to actually clear out the two most dangerous angles that the CTs could be playing in. And it mollies Headtrick out of position, but Stown wasn't quite ready for it as Headtrick moved out, right? And he was ticking in the molly. Stown just didn't find the right timing. He started to move into a different position right as Headtrick was swinging out, which is partly why you don't always swing just as soon as that molly lands. If you take a couple of ticks in the molly when you know you're going to be pushed out of a position, a lot of the time you can catch your opponents where they're like, okay, well, if he was going to fall out of this molly, he would have done so immediately. They start to move, and then you catch him in the side. But then we have a very similar situation in the following round in terms of things on a micro level not working. I mean, Stair is going to find the initial entry. Yabi's in a really risky position here, but a very good one for the way this round plays out. He'll find himself a kill. You have 4 players grouped up in red room, and they want to cross to go for the B play, especially because of the kill Yabi got, but they just do it at the wrong time. They toss that smoke down, Stair crosses, looking the other direction, which means Kensizor finds a free kill in the back, and not only that, but there's no possibility for a trade. Turns into a 3v3. Stown wants to hold that smoke, but he knows he needs to support his team. And actually, with this play here, Cadian gets the kill on Alex. This round feels unlosable. But then Stown moves out. And in his defense, I think the idea might be that he's expecting Cadian to peek out and hold with him. So they're kind of double peeking these angles here. But Cadian just moves back to site because that's not the greatest double hold of all time, right? Cadian moves back to site, and all of a sudden this round becomes very winnable. The bomb's not even planted. Stown ended up dying. Device has a nice flash, but it's not unlosable by any means. Headtrick in the 1v2, but Cadian will find the kill. So they actually do close out the round. Really uncomfortable. I mean, they played it out at the very end quite well. A little awkward the way Stown made that move because, of course, the players are most likely pushing through that smoke. You already knew, I think there was 2 of them there. I would have expected them to just go in cave and play out the 3v3 or something, given you knew both players were towards CT, but I think there was probably a miscommunication there that he expected they were double peeking. Otherwise, he's just not got the right timing. I mean, I think those players are pushing through that most of the time based on the information they had. So Bait actually forced at 10-6, and Astralis won the round off of an A play. You know it's going to be a force back after that. You're expecting the force in the following round. So as Astralis, well, let's try a B play. And the play here makes a lot of sense. I've seen plenty of teams go for this play. You nade out the smoke. You know that when your opponents are on low econ, they're very often going to have someone close up to that smoke. I mean, Device even did the exact same play himself previously in this game. But the way they went for that play, and I'll show it back in a second, just didn't make sense. Device almost picks up a 1v4, but the way they go for that play is exactly what I'm talking about when I say they make a lot of really confusing micro decisions, because you know that you get smoked off here. Now you can nade out this smoke. A lot of the time, I'm kind of expecting a flash that pops right here. I think a flash that pops high right sometimes can telegraph that it's coming because someone could see it from a lot of different angles. But if you flash right over here, it can be strong. Or I've seen teams that just have 2 players here, nade out the smoke, and they're both looking at this player and you can trade on him. Instead, what actually happens is as this smoke is getting naded out, They clearly have the wrong timings. Yabi tosses a flash over. As the smoke blows up, Stair has to turn from the flash, so nobody's looking at the exact most common angle for people to be in on this type of force buy. Nobody's ready for it even at all. Instead, they have this flash that I'd rather not have the flash so Stair can be looking the right direction. They do get the kill, but then Alex spamming through the smoke here, he gets one, and Yabi just can't get that spam back. And from the 2D replay when I was watching this initially, it looks worse because Yabi feels like he knows where that player is. He just can't find it. And on the other end, you actually have Cadian that's going to, he throws a bit of mid pressure. He rotates his way through the door, swings out here. That's one where I think he's probably looking at his radar. He's probably just not quite ready for a player to actually be there. If he hard clears that or he jiggles it for information, because someone could definitely be going for the flank in that situation, especially because your opponents are on a force. You're expecting very often you might see, okay, that hit's coming through and someone's going to lurk through that cheetah smoke with SMGs, things like that, and catch the play in the back. If he's ready for that, he maybe gets one kill, maybe it's a different round, but at the same time, it would still be a 2v3 or a 1v3 if it gets traded. It's just one of those plays where, from a macro perspective, I think that play makes sense. On the micro level, it just does not work by any means. Then you had a force and an eco, ends up 9-11, which is, you're feeling like you're getting back into this one if you're bait. And then we have yet another just unfortunate play here, because you've got the delayed mid take, or a slight delay on the mid take from Astralis. Stair actually gets out. He makes his way over the box. Cadian with the bomb, he gets into a good position. He actually tags Ascenthiel here. So he sees Ascenthiel, tags him. So from Ascenthiel's POV, he's spamming in a smoke. He's moving because he's tagged. He's moving very slowly. Cadian has the absolute drop on him here, and Cadian just can't get the kill. And this is just a kill that he just needs to be getting. He just needs to be getting that kill, and he doesn't. And at the same time, Stair also dies on the other side, or on the other side of middle, so they end up in a 3v5, and this is just like a ridiculous setup. You have Baden with like 5 players almost holding towards middle. Now, you do have something, because Device, he does manage to lurk over through A, and NPL, because of the way this setup is, he's holding like both the B lurk and the A lurk at the same time, so it's not unwinnable if Device finds the right timing, but the other side of this play needs to find the right timing as well. And once Down dies and there's only one player there, NPL immediately pivots back looking for the kill on Device, finds it. Yabi can't get anything done, and now you have bait on double digits. Astralis back on pistols. This feels like you're watching this one live. You're like, wow, this is actually going to happen. From whatever 11-6 I think it was to 13-11 they're about to lose, and they go for the A play. The A play is just not going to work out. They have some money. It's not like they forced here. They have some money to work with because of the loss bonus, and they can still buy in the following round, but they don't really get much done. You end up at 11-11, and at certain points in this game, I felt like Astralis got pretty unlucky with some timings, with some interactions, some different things that happen. This is an unfortunate one. Obviously, it's not completely bad luck, because if the T's have a lot of people crossing, very often you can spam through there. If occasionally you're going to get hit, sometimes you're not. In this case, could have been worse. Down could have died, right? And still, it's a 5v5 and it's unconfirmed damage, which means they can't really play too differently off of it. Astralis does get free mid control. Of course, they used a bit of utility to take it, but they get the mid control just fine, and they push anybody off of Cheetah, so they're in a pretty good situation, it feels like, here. And they decide to go back for an A play in this case. I actually really respect the setup from Bait, by the way, because from the beginning of the round, they actually play very passive, and it feels like they're kind of just saying, like, look, this is 11-11 in such an important game. You know who's going to make a mistake here? You're going to make a mistake. We can tell you're not playing the way you normally play. Feels like you're playing a little anxious a lot of the time. We're just going to let you make the mistake into us. And they play just super passive. They hold on to their utility, so they have lots of utility late round if Astralis try and play super slow. And a lot of the time, when I see teams in these high pressure situations, teams that are a little worse at those high pressure situations are teams that play differently, and they go, well, individual players, I don't want to be the reason we lose this game, so I'm not going to go for this individual play, this play that I normally make, where I'm going to clear out, take some information, get something done. I'm going to play more safe. And I think Bait are kind of playing against that, playing very safe. They actually have this smoke that Kensazor can drop down as soon as that information. I think he might have spotted someone, but by plenty of time. They really just have a good feel for the way this round is going to play out, and it's going to work out perfectly in their favor. Because Kensazor, There's the smoke towards CT. Kensizor is in a reasonable position here, and he finds the right timing for the Swain to pick up the double, almost picks up the triple. I mean, Cadian just has to get that trade a little bit faster, but still, it turns into a 2v3. Device is in a good position, but they're kind of trapped here because there's one coming through Donut, and this is how afterplants can get really uncomfortable if you don't have someone... if you don't have control of enough areas, right? And Cadian, instead of retaking Donut, I think he's worried about the timing on this smoke coming down before he can actually clear this out. But because he doesn't retake Donut, he just ends up in this really awkward situation. He's not, it feels like he's not sure where he should be moving. And you have Essential come through Donut, just take him out. Leaving Device into a 1v3. And Device, yet again, is going to do an incredible job of nearly winning the 1v3. And I can't remember... I think I've posted this, I said this in a video I actually released, because there's a couple of Astralis videos. I actually had one, Astralis might make the major, and I made it when they lost, I think their first best of 3 in the MRQ, and then I couldn't post it until a couple of days later, and actually I thought when they beat Ents they had already made it through, and I was like, oh, thankfully I didn't post this one, that would have aged poorly. Unfortunately, I didn't post it, because it would have aged beautifully. But at the same time, Device is always just one kill away, it feels like. He does... It's just so unfortunate because he does such a good job. And it's not like he's one kill away from making a good impact. He's one kill away from carrying his team across the line. But here we go, right back to A for Astralis. They actually get smoked off, but they boost over, which gets down into a pretty good position. They have full mid control. They're in a really good situation to actually close this one out. Not only that, they get the spam through onto Kensizor. Head trick in Temple doesn't end up really seeing anybody. And you have, this time around, Astralis, in the previous time they took A, I might have skipped over that round, they didn't have donut control, which makes the afterplant, the retake, A on Ancient is, I think, the highest retake percent site in the game, because if you manage to control Donut, you manage to put some pressure, you manage to do a lot of things right, it's very hard to hold A. But if you have mid control plus Donut control plus A, the situation Astralis was in, plus they had the 5v4, that's not a situation you're typically in, and that's one where retaking A on Ancient is going to be pretty tough to do. So I can't even believe that Astralis made it into overtime at this point. I really thought down 12-11 they'd just lose, but I really like this play they make here. They have Stown actually make a lot of noise. I think another player might have made a couple of footsteps, so it sounded like 2 players, but either way, they put some pressure towards A. It actually does draw the rotate, and they're going to use that off that a little delayed timing to pressure into middle and to take mid control. I think it makes a lot of sense. A lot of the time you hear that pressure towards A, it's going to take one of your mid defenders away, so it's going to be a lot harder to actually defend middle, and it's much less likely that Astralis get picked off in the process. Head trick's in position, but he gets smoked off and actually trades position with NPL. And NPL actually goes for a little spam through here, just off the mark of what would have killed Stair, because Astralis move out mid. I think NPL's spam is for players that are peeking out mid, pushing out mid. Instead, NPL or Stown or Stair rather is just on an off angle, ready for that exact play. Then Stown in towards A main. Yeah. Now, in his defense, if we actually look at that, Stown does clear out kind of this angle, and Kensizor walks into that just afterwards. So to some extent, it's kind of a little bit unlucky. But at the same time, I have this hunch that maybe there was a miscommunication as to where that kill was picked up. Because if you're Stown, if you think the kill happened, if you actually think that kill happened in towards Donut, I think that play from Stown seems to make more sense, because he clears it out and you're expecting that second player to be Temple, and what you really don't want is that op in this position to stick here, or for the op to drop out into Brokey and get kills on your players coming through Donut. But I don't know, it just felt he could have taken a little bit more time, it felt like, in that situation. It wasn't like the other side of the push. Astralis wasn't rushing on the other side, and they hadn't even seen an opera on that side. But I don't know, maybe that's more standard of a play, and I'm just not watching too much Ancient. Still, you end up in a 2v3. Device gets caught with a molly out. Stair with the lurk doesn't work. And that's kind of unfortunate for Astralis. I mean, T side, you open up into a 5v4. That's a round that you feel like you should be converting, and just doesn't end up happening. But still, not the end of the world by any means. You just go into the following round, still plenty of money to buy. Astralis go for a pretty standard default style play, and Yabi gets straight spam directly through the wall. NPL finds the kill in mid and turns it into a 5v3, and he actually just straight up finds a spam directly through the smoke. He doesn't even nade the smoke. That's actually insane. But Imagine, just for a second, I thought about this. Imagine working for Astralis and watching this. And it's just like, so many hopes rely on your team just winning. They're clearly a team that should be making it through the MRQ in terms of individual skill level, but they're losing these rounds in individual breakdowns, but also just like some pretty bad luck, like some really nice. I don't want to say it's lucky as much as it's like really nice plays from Bait that also like percentage-based plays. You're not always going to find those spam kills, and it feels like in the most important moments, that's when those spam kills are actually coming through. But again, we have some like individual plays that aren't making sense from Astralis, especially some like hesitancy and some panic, right? Allowing a lot of things to happen that maybe normally wouldn't happen. But still, 3v4, by no means is this an unwinnable round, especially you have actually playing off of the bomb site is Bait, and so if you can land some kills, you can land some shots, you can actually turn this one in your favor pretty effectively, but you really need your players landing some nice shots, and unfortunately, Device, the player most likely to land a nice shot, just gets killed immediately. So this is kind of the idea behind that back lane play that Astralis had. It's actually pretty much exactly the same as the one Bait has, right? Your opponents use a lot of utility to take the B bomb site, and you can play for the retake. You can prevent them from getting into good after plants. Stown 1v3, 1v2 now, actually finds the kill on a head trick, and he gets the ace too, which brings him from 7 kills to 12. He was having a really tough game up until that point. It's just an unfortunate one. They turn a 3v5. They do a very good job of turning it into a winnable round. Stown wins the clutch almost, but just can't convert it. And you end up with, yet again, Astralis kind of facing down elimination, right? There's one more round before match point, but you simply can't go into CT side down 3-0. It's just not... It's not likely. And then you have yet another just micro breakdown. The play itself, there's nothing wrong with this play, but look at where Astralis is looking. They have Stown spamming, they have Yabi boosting, he's got his flash out for whatever reason because he's thinking about what they're going to do next. Cadian is throwing utility from behind. There is a big gap. This isn't a small, there is a big gap where this is just completely open because Stown turns, but Stown was reloading when he turned. Stown reloaded as he turned. So it's like that gap was there, even though Stown looked like he was covering that angle for a second right afterwards. Alex finds the initial kill, not only gets the kill, turns into a 5v4, but also gets the information, and then he's gonna find another kill. And this one, I'm not sure if this is where the gap is, because there is a gap, or there used to be at least, unless they patched it. There's a gap in the wood here where you can actually see, but I think this is just a random spam. You can see the gap there. Does he see anybody? I think this is just a nice, well-timed spam, gets them another kill. And at this point, if you're looking at Stair, and Stair kind of has to make a play here. Obviously, Bait are fully stacked on the right side of the map. They're all fully stacked towards B. Stair actually gets the time. He gets out A. He gets into a good position. They're a 3v4, but they can actually make the rotate. Stown is in a pretty good position to lurk on this, and they didn't have information to like hear him drop or anything. Stair misses the kill. He misses the kill. Guys, this is what I'm talking. He misses the kill. He comes up behind Ken. This is a free kill. He misses it. And because of that, Stair now has to look this direction. He has to try and deal with the player in mid. And because of that, Alex on the flank, well, Stown has to turn to kill him, but he's in the middle of the open because he wants to play the off angle, but he easily could have died before getting that kill if Alex had just baited the footsteps. But either way, he gets one kill, which is, I guess, a reasonably decent outcome given the situation. But now Stair can get 2v1 on this play, right? And Stair does get one, but NPL's there immediately for the trade. That leaves Cadian in a 1v2, and this should be a pretty comfortable round win for Bait, and it is. And that's like that's just, again, imagine working for Astralis or being an Astralis fan and watching this live. Just imagine the anxiety. You just get 3-0'd in all of these ways, and it just keeps being that they're in reasonable, like pretty good positions, not bad spots, and they just micro-wise are just making mistake after mistake after mistake. And here, fast B play from Bait. I actually really like the idea behind speeding things up, especially when you know your opponents are kind of panicky, going very quickly on the first buy round. But Device picks up 2, picks up 3. Device just kind of single-handedly willing his team into a winning position here. Again, you have pretty... By the way, this is a nice play from Cadian. Na'Vi were the first team I remember seeing do that, where they delay for a second at that corner, because once you cross to this side, there's footsteps you can't hear that you could hear from this side. So you delay for a second to hear the footsteps. And to some point here in this game, it actually feels like Device is going a lot more aggressive. He's kind of doing what people always asked of Zywoo, to like take the game into his hands, because he's got 33 kills right now, and it really feels like no matter what, their team can be in a good position. They need Device getting kills, and I'm sure any Opera that's played on like competitive teams before can sympathize. Sometimes it just feels like, or even a rifler, like, look, if my team, I'm on point right now. If my team can just put us in winnable situations, I can win us the game. But then your team keeps putting you in terrible positions, putting you in really unwinnable spots, and you're just like, okay, I just have to be way more aggressive. I have to make these plays. I have to make moves and win the game for us myself. And this is the first moment where I felt that really was that 5-7 play. I mean, if he dies there, it gets a little uncomfortable. But it's not like a crazy play. It just feels like he's playing a little less Device-like. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. But in this round, I was trying to set this one up, what he does here. But still, 15-14. You already came back from 12-11. 15-14 shouldn't be a problem, right? It should be very much doable. Stown gets a bit of chip damage off. And not only that, but Essential and Headtrick actually, they naded themselves. That's why they're both on 50 HP. I think he gets bumped by his teammate here because he's trying to move diagonally. His teammate's right beside him. So it bumps him, nade comes right back, hits them both down to 45 HP. So Astralis, you got a little unlucky on the spam throughs on the last couple rounds in the game, but you actually get kind of lucky on that one, and you're in a pretty good position, right? Because you've got Cadian with the op, they don't have to put any kind of really huge pressure on middle. Obviously, one of the problems with Astralis is that it sometimes is apparent that they are double opping or going to double op when it gets to overtime. Now, Cadian is very good. Well, Cadian is definitely better with the op than he is with a rifle, so I can understand why they want to go for that, but at the same time, it does open up opportunities for the opponents. This is an angle. I don't know about this angle. I've seen a couple people play it before, but I usually see people, I think, play this when it's like a 4-spy and you have the op saved over. I don't know. I don't know if this is like a bad play or not. Sorry, the angle I think is not a bad play. The thing I think that goes on here is Stown actually was here, and I think this setup makes a lot of sense if you have someone, if Device has a smoke or a molly, or if Stown is here with his molly so that Device can get one kill, Stown can quick molly it off, and Device can back up. But when you have no utility, I think what happens is Device is going to find this kill, and I think in his mind he thought he had Stown here because Stown was here a little bit earlier. So he jumps across and he's like, is there a smoke? There's no smoke. Okay, I can't really back up. Walks back into it. And NPL obviously hits a nice shot here, but at the same time, this just feels like one where he's expecting a teammate. I mean, the problem is Device, by the way, left side, walking back into an angle while scope. It's one where you definitely can lose that, right? It's not crazy to lose that engagement, but at the same time, what else is Device supposed to do in that situation, right? He can't just stay on that side forever. He's got to get away somehow. And that just feels like a combo mistake between like players just not being on the same page. That's what it feels like to me. Because otherwise, maybe he just gets that kill, he unpeaks and repeaks to the exact same angle. Like maybe that play makes more sense. But still, 4v4, you've got this really good lurk position from NPL. Yabi gets the drop on the players coming through Donut, but can't find the kill. But still, Stair gets that kill. Stair gets a kill himself. So it's a 4v3. You have temple control. Cadian turns into a 4v2. The T's don't have donut control, but Cadian decides to back around. And if we compare this directly to when you had Device and Cadian in the clutch in the 2v4, I think it was a 2v4 or a 2v3 or something very similar. When they don't have donut control, they have to be worried about it. In this case, Cadian gets the kill, doesn't want to give the kill back, which perfectly justifiable. I can understand why you're thinking that. You walk into this and you could just die. But this does mean that Alex is in a, Alex has a slightly more comfortable play in the 1v3 that he's going to be into. By the way, he actually nades directly on top of his teammate, and maybe that can even tell them that Alex was donut. Depending on how they hear that nade, but I don't think they actually know that. They just know that nade landed. Alex knows that Cadian is going to be he's going to have to be coming through Red Room. This is the only rotation he could be making here, so he's just completely ready for it. He gets the initial kill, and then he hits, in Astralis' defense, Alex hit some really nice shots there. He played it absolutely perfectly, and this is, Alex is not like the top fragger generally on that side. In fact, he's had some really tough games in the MRQ, so for him to close it out is probably a big confidence booster for him. But Astralis, I don't know. From the macro perspective, the reason it's so unfortunate for Astralis, I just feel like they have so many things going for them, but they just can't bring it all together. It's crazy.